Imagine waking up and just being completely paralyzed.
Oh, that is literally my worst nightmare.
Right, you can hear the people in the room standing over you, casually discussing your fate.
Just deciding who gets to own you.
Exactly. But you can't even twitch a single finger to defend yourself. You are trapped in your own mind while your body is being claimed as property.
It is such an intense, terrifying concept.
It really is. Welcome to today's deep dive. Today we are looking at the exact moment a man's biology is forcibly hijacked, to rewrite his entire existence.
And we are exploring what it means when the very concept of loyalty is ripped right out of your hands.
So what are we getting into today?
We are diving deep into a beautifully brutal section of D.P. Kirk's 2017 sci-fi and fantasy novel, San Vitae: The Awakening.
Which is such an amazing, wild read.
It really is. And specifically, we are going to act as your reader's guide through Chapter 6. The chapter is titled New Covenant.
And this chapter is, super important, right?
Oh, absolutely. This single brief chapter is the absolute linchpin of the novel. It is the moment the narrative abruptly shifts gears.
Yeah, the entire established physics of the world are just thrown out the window.
Exactly. Everything you think you know changes in these few pages.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because if you are a fan of hard sci-fi or dark fantasy, this book does something really unique.
It mashes genres together in a very cool way.
It does. It takes these familiar gothic tropes, blood politics, immortal lords, feral protectors, and it just slams them into hard quantum mechanics.
It is a really volatile mix.
Definitely. But before we get to the claustrophobic nightmare of Chapter 6, we really need to understand the fragile reality that our protagonist is living in.
Right, our main character, Kurien.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are the rules of this broken world before they get shattered?
To set the stage, the world of San Vitae is living in the aftermath of a massive cataclysm. They call it the Heavens Scar.
Now, if you are familiar with standard post-apocalyptic tropes, you might expect, a nuclear war or a meteor.
Sure, the usual stuff. But Kirk does something much more interesting here.
Yeah, the scar is actually a tear in reality itself.
Exactly. And it stems from a pre-cataclysm experiment involving a massive ring-shaped spaceship called the Salvation.
So we are dealing with advanced human tech that just went horribly wrong.
Intensely wrong. The Salvation utilized this alternate space drive.
Like a dimension-hopping engine.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
And it was combined with adaptive nanotechnology that was designed to heal the ship's own hull.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Oh, it was. When the experiment catastrophically failed, it literally ripped a hole between dimensions.
Wow.
And that alternate space energy mixed with the medical nanites. It rained down on the planet as fallout.
Which is just such a cool concept. This fallout is what created Vitae, right?
Yes, Vitae is the magical, energy-based life force that drives the entire plot.
It completely reframes the fantasy aesthetic for the reader. The magic is actually just a volatile cocktail of...
That is exactly what it is. And this fallout, well, it fundamentally split society.
Right, it created two distinct classes.
On one side, you have the Santerrie. These are powerful, nearly immortal beings who wield Vitae.
But they have a major weakness.
They do. Because this quantum energy is so volatile, their bodies can't sustain it naturally.
So they rule over the sands, the normal, powerless humans.
Exactly. The sands have to donate their raw, pure red blood cells to stabilize the Santerrie's biology.
It is basically a high-stakes, dystopian feudal system.
Their blood is literal currency.
Right. You pay taxes in red blood cells to keep the local immortal warlord stable.
And in return, they use their immense power to protect your town.
Protect you from mutated wasteland monsters or from zealots like the Humanis La Luna.
Right, the pure blood anti-magic soldiers who want to wipe out anyone infected by the fallout.
It is a messy, deeply unequal social contract.
They call it the Daedrith Accord. And sitting right at the nexus of this is our protagonist, Kurien.
Now, Kurien isn't just a normal guy. He is a former Sans who was forcibly converted into a San Vitae conscript.
Yeah, he was drafted and biologically altered.
Just to serve and protect the Covenness of Iran, an icy, incredibly powerful woman named Myasuchi.
Their dynamic is so fascinating. Based on the excerpts we have, Myasuchi is just the absolute epitome of control.
Oh, totally. She operates out of this pristine, cavernous library, sipping vintage wine.
All while casually dismantling threats from wealthy merchants.
Kurien isn't just an employee. He is profoundly, obsessively devoted to her.
He literally tells her that if being bound to her is damnation, then let him be damned.
His entire identity is wrapped up in his adherence to the covenant that binds them.
He views his feral transformations, summoning bladed claws, gaining heightened senses, as tools that exist solely to enact her will.
He actually believes his devotion is a choice, a sacred vow.
But you don't buy it, do you?
I really don't buy it. If he is biologically and legally bound to this all-powerful woman...
Right. The quantum nanites in his blood are literally keyed to serve her.
Exactly. So how does a world-breaking rebellion even start? Doesn't the magic literally prevent him from betraying her or walking away?
That is a great question, and it brings us directly to Chapter 6.
The pivot point.
Yes, that is the exact moment where his unquestionable loyalty is subverted, not by his own choice, but by a biological hijacking.
Okay, let's walk through the narrative of this scene, because the pacing is just relentless.
It really is. Kurien wakes up in a dark underground space, and he is completely paralyzed.
It's like having your entire operating system crash, and the only thing still running is your microphone.
That is a highly accurate way to describe his sensory deprivation here. He can receive data, but he can't output anything.
So what does he hear?
He can hear a gruff, unidentified man arguing with Rikuko.
Rikuko is Myasuchi's twin sister.
Yes, but she is the polar opposite of the stoic Covenness. Rikuko is chaos incarnate.
The source material notes she purposefully wears these mismatched, torn schoolgirl uniforms to unbalance people.
And those uniforms are covered in gashes and burns. She operates entirely outside the pristine political sphere of her sister.
She sounds wild.
She is. So this gruff guy is calling Kurien a Santerrie dog, and he's demanding to know why Rikuko dragged her sister's enforcer into their secret hideout.
And how does Rikuko respond?
She doesn't even explain herself. She simply acts like a deceptive, petulant child and declares, "He's mine now."
Talk about stripping away someone's humanity.
I know. She doesn't ask him to join her cause. She just claims him like property she stole from her sister's bedroom.
But the violation goes even further than that.
It does. Kurien is somehow compelled, without any volition of his own, to press his face against Rikuko.
And when he makes physical contact, he notices something impossible.
Something that completely shatters his understanding of the world. She has physical warmth and a strong beating pulse.
Wait, explain why that is such a massive red flag in the context of this universe.
In the established lore up to this point, warmth and a pulse are traits exclusive to pure-blood, uninfected humans.
Because the undead-like Vitae users, the Santerrie, are physically cold, right?
Exactly. Their vascular systems don't operate like ours because the alternate space energy sustains them.
So for Rikuko, who is a powerful Santerrie, to be radiating human warmth,
it means she has fundamentally altered her biology in a way that defies the physics of Vitae.
Here's where it gets really interesting. What is Rikuko's endgame here?
That is the big mystery. Are we supposed to read this as genuine affection?
Right. Is she trying to save Kurien from a stagnant life as her sister's lapdog?
Or is she just sadistically stealing Myasuchi's favorite toy to spark a family war?
What's fascinating is how Kirk layers Rikuko's character so you never fully trust her motives.
She constantly shifts personas. One minute she is an innocent schoolgirl, the next she is a deathly crone.
Earlier in the text, we get this rare flash of vulnerability, right?
Yes, where she hints at a shared trauma with her sister. She asks Myasuchi if she still has the dream.
But then she also explicitly taunts Myasuchi about wanting to play with her pet.
The text suggests it is a volatile cocktail of both. A twisted, genuine affection for Kurien, paired with a deeply ingrained, destructive sibling rivalry.
So she orders her men to prepare Kurien to become one of us.
What she calls a reborn Sanite. And they have to do it before his master realizes he's gone.
And then he just fades back into the dark.
Which brings us to the title of the chapter, New Covenant.
It's doing some incredibly heavy lifting for such a short chapter.
It operates as a brilliant double entendre. As we look at the broader lore, the New Covenant is actually the name of a heavily armed military faction.
Right, the guys in hazmat suits who hunt aberrant magic users.
Exactly. But in the claustrophobic context of this basement, it represents a literal forced covenant for Kurien.
A completely non-consensual biological rebirth.
It violently severs the old rules that bound him to Myasuchi.
And it forcibly ties his nervous system to Rikuko's underground faction.
This raises an important question about the literary mechanics Kirk uses to pull this off.
The writing style itself shifts here, doesn't it?
It really does. The extreme brevity of the chapter is entirely intentional.
It perfectly mimics the fading, fragmented consciousness of the protagonist.
And the sensory detail of her unnatural warmth is such a fantastic show, don't tell moment.
Oh, I love that part. Kirk doesn't pause the narrative to write a dense paragraph explaining that Rikuko has hacked the night magic system.
He just tells you she feels warm.
And Kurien's internal panic tells the reader that the established laws of physics are suddenly void.
Kirk methodically strips away all the tools that usually make Kurien powerful.
Prior to this, Kurien is written as a hyper-aware, lethal combatant.
He uses feral eyes to see energy auras. He blink steps across rooms. He heals instantly.
But by reducing this apex predator to raw, sensory vulnerability, the author forces you to feel his helplessness.
It's jarring, but in the best way possible.
You're reading along, getting comfortable with these long internal monologues where Kurien debates his sacred duty.
And then bam, the lights go out.
When he wakes up, the entire genre of the book has shifted.
The genre shift is perhaps the most impressive structural feat of the novel.
Think about the first 5 chapters. The narrative is heavily focused on political posturing.
It takes place in cavernous, pristine offices. They are dealing with treaties, drinking fine wine.
Maintaining the delicate Didrith Accord, it has a very gothic, vampire senate vibe to it. High society monsters playing chess.
But after chapter 6, those pristine offices are completely abandoned.
The narrative just descends into a gritty, psychological rebellion.
We are suddenly in rusted Inquisitor vaults, collapsing refuse tunnels, and chaotic urban battlefields.
The tone shifts from diplomatic tension straight into survival horror and hard sci-fi.
So what does this all mean for you as the reader? Why should someone pick up San Vitae: The Awakening based on this one turning point?
Because the butterfly effect of this forced rebirth triggers some of the most wild, escalating consequences I've ever seen in a sci-fi novel.
The fallout is massive. And it is largely because of the biological mechanism Rikuko uses to initiate this new covenant.
Kurien eventually receives what is called the Sanite kiss.
Rikuko physically breathes her synthesized essence, her modified life force, directly into his lungs.
Which doesn't just heal him, it violently awakens a demon aspect within his consciousness.
We really need to explain how cool this concept is. In this world, channeling of AI isn't just casting spells.
Right. The quantum energy is semi-sentient.
Using it awakens a literal alternate consciousness inside you, a demon that constantly tries to claw its way to the surface and take over your body.
And it leads to sequences where the reader simply cannot trust the reality presented on the page.
Because Kurien's demon is unleashed, just as he is captured by the actual New Covenant military forces.
They lock him in an Inquisitor vault and subject him to horrific torture to drain his pure vitae.
And his mind completely fragments to cope with the pain.
The way Kirk writes this psychological breakdown is devastating. Kurien hallucinates an entire 12-year alternate timeline.
12 full years inside his head.
He experiences a full life where he and Myasuchi run away together, they build a home, they have a son named Han.
They navigate everyday domestic struggles. He feels the passage of years.
All while his physical body is actually strung up in an Iron Maiden, being bled dry.
As a reader, you get deeply invested in these tender, quiet moments with his hallucinated son, Han.
And then the narrative violently snaps back to the bloody reality of the torture chamber. You start questioning your own perception.
What is a psychic vision sent through the alternate space? And what is just a trauma-induced dream built by a breaking mind?
Kirk plays with that ambiguity masterfully. But the narrative isn't purely internal psychology.
No, it eventually explodes into massive cinematic sci-fi set pieces.
For instance, the emergence of a towering, city-sized black spire that simply erupts from the ruins of the city of Rome.
That structure is unbelievable.
The text describes its tiers being the size of actual cities, forged from a mysterious dark metal.
A metal that just casually deflects advanced military missiles.
And as the world crumbles, Kurien manages to escape the Inquisitor vault, though his mind is entirely shattered.
This leads to another brilliant dynamic when he crosses paths with Sharina.
Sharina is such a fierce character. She's a shaved-headed, tattooed evoker who is also subjected to the vaults.
When they meet, they accidentally trigger a blood bond.
How does that actual mechanism work in the lore, especially when he's already biologically hijacked by Rikuko?
Blood bonding is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
It isn't just sharing power. It physically links their nervous systems and entangles their souls.
Sharina's tattoos are so visually striking, too.
They are lavender flowers, each representing a fallen member of her clan. And they actually glow with alternate space radiation when she uses her abilities.
When they bond, it's this desperate, messy act of survival.
It forces Kurien's volatile, hijacked biology to instantly rejuvenate her emaciated body.
They end up surviving together in the urban ruins, fighting off mutated drone soldiers.
And there's this incredibly vivid scene where Kurien's demon aspect actually helps them.
Which is supposed to be this mindless, destructive force, right?
Exactly. But it actually redesigns Sharina's torn hospital gown into intricate armored leather combat gear.
Out of literal shadow and blood magic to protect her. It is amazing.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the way the book blends these genres is the real reason to dive into it.
It doesn't just place gothic vampires in a futuristic setting.
It creates a cohesive universe where the vampires are the logical result of an alternate space physics catastrophe.
The strict societal covenants, the feral beasts, the nanite healing spaceships, and the genetic manipulation all feel like they belong in the exact same ecosystem.
You start the book in a quiet, candlelit library with a glass of wine.
And by the final act, you are fighting multi-dimensional entities with synthetic amplifiers in the shadow of a space elevator.
It never stops accelerating. And Chapter 6, New Covenant, is the needle that threads those two vastly different halves together.
In just a few pages, it strips away the protagonist's agency.
And it launches a reality-bending war between magic, machinery, and the human soul.
It is the ultimate terrifying realization that your loyalty means absolutely nothing when your biology decides it's time to follow a new master.
Which brings up a deeply compelling philosophical question that Kirk weaves through the rest of the text.
About the nature of the demon itself, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the lore of the Santerrie, the demon aspect of the Vitae is universally feared.
They see it as an external parasite, a maddening curse that will inevitably consume your sanity if you don't suppress it.
They train for decades to cage it.
Yeah.
There's that flashback where Master Gosseth literally beats Kurien in the snow just to teach him how to build mental walls against the demon.
But look at how Kurien's inner demon actually behaves when the chips are down.
Exactly. When he is locked in that Inquisitor vault and his conscious mind retreats into the hallucination of his son Han, it is the demon aspect that stays present.
The demon takes the physical pain.
It violently fights back against the tortures to keep Kurien's body breathing.
And later, it's the demon that steps in to protect Sharina.
Weaving armor for her and reminding her to find her courage when Kurien's human mind is hesitating.
Which forces us to ask a really profound question.
What if the demon isn't an external monster at all?
What if, in a deeply traumatized post-apocalyptic world where everyone is fighting just to exist, the demon is something else?
What if the demon is simply the truest, most unfiltered reflection of a person's sheer will to survive?
Oh, wow. What if the madness they are so afraid of isn't an infection from the alternate space?
Right. What if it is just the rawest version of humanity doing whatever it takes to stay alive when the polite rules of society are burned away?
It reframes the entire conflict of the book.
Are these characters fighting a monster inside their blood? Or are they just terrified of their own limitless capacity for survival once the comforting illusions of their covenants are stripped away?
That is a phenomenal thought to leave on. If the demon is just your own buried survival instinct, then old loyalties and polite contracts don't stand a chance.
Just like Kurien learns in that dark basement.
The clean line of devotion isn't just murky, it gets rewritten in blood.